Have you ever experienced this? Whether in your Toastmasters personal, professional life. You needed to ask someone to do something. Depending upon the person and the request, you had a 33.3% chance of getting a yes, no, or maybe response. Those no and maybe replies might have left you feeling desperate or even angry. What did you do? You might have followed up asking again and again and again. Do you sometimes feel like you're begging? After serving as a club officer, area director, and volunteer outside of Toastmasters, Susan will share with us some wisdom that she hopes helps us to inspire rather than beg when we make our next request. Please help me welcome Susan.
Thank you, Yuri. I am going to share my screen. Hopefully, as I always say when I try to do this.
Me enable, oh, you can. Go ahead, you can.
Okay. Can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right, excellent. All right, well, thank you, Yuri, and thank you everybody who is here this evening. I hope my introduction hit home a little bit for you because I found myself through the years in either leadership or even family trying to figure out ways to get people to do things and maybe they don't know they want to, or to somehow motivate them. So the title of this presentation is Let's Inspire, Not Beg, simply because I'm tired of begging, and I would assume some of you are as well. But I had a lot of difficulty trying to figure out a title for this, and I'm not sure it's correct yet, so let's find out. Inspire versus influence versus motivate. Those may sound all pretty similar. So I have a question for you. Would you like somebody to do something, such as take a meeting role, become an officer, take a role outside the district, or anything where you have to ask a question in your personal or your employment, and found that you would inspire, influence, or motivate? Which would you like to do? And I'm looking just for a shout out here. How would you get somebody to do something if you weren't quite sure if they would?
Inspire.
Inspire? What else?
Motivate.
Motivate? Anyone want to influence? Okay, well, here, let me share something that I found. These all sounded very similar to me. And so I went to an expert, thesaurus.com, and looked up these various words, looking up the synonyms. And here's what I found. They kind of go across each other. So whether you're inspiring, influencing, or motivating, you're pretty much trying to do the same thing, but you may have a personal way of doing so. This tells me that if you want to motivate somebody to do something, especially if you're not sure if they're on your side to do so, you have to kind of know the person a little bit. And so some of the things that I'm going to talk about this evening will lead in that direction. So I've got 5 objectives for us. First of all, we're going to identify why people don't jump at the chance to do something when they're asked. We're going to plot an approach for how we might get people to do things. We're going to talk about how we present that particular request, how we respond to the person's reply, and then following the presentation, we'll have that Q&A and a discussion as Yuri was talking about. I want to start off with a quote from Bruce Lee. If you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done. Now, I don't know about you. I can at times be a procrastinator, even though I do get things done. But just making a phone call today to make a reservation, it took me a week, only because I don't want to be told no, it's not available. And it's that talking thing where you don't know who's on the other end and you don't know if they're going to accept your request. Here's another quote I want to share. And this comes from a former leader of mine at Direct Supply who participated in a speech contest for Toastmasters probably in 2007. And John was my leader for about 8 years. And he said, this was the title of his speech: if you don't ask, you don't get. It rings through for a lot of people because so many times we hesitate to do something, not knowing what kind of a response we're going to get. Many times it's going to be positive, so let's go ahead and do it. Why don't people jump at the chance? Now, you may see a request as something that's not that out of the ordinary. It's an opportunity for the person based on probably your observation, maybe of their leadership skills. And if it's in Toastmasters, roles they've taken, speeches they've given, you get to know them a little bit. But that doesn't always mean that they will see things the way that you see it. So let's take a look at why they might not be jumping at that wonderful request and opportunity you're presenting to them. So first of all, maybe they're not interested in your request or they don't know enough about it. Each of us has different values, goals, things that we feel are going to make us grow, and they don't always match what the person asking is thinking about. We have a resistance built in sometimes to requests that are made of us. The person may be skeptical or distrustful. I hate to say distrustful, but think about yourself as we're going through these. How many times has somebody come up to you and asked you to do something and you weren't quite sure that you had enough faith or belief in that person to trust them, to give an answer, even if it's no, because will they hold that against you? Nobody wants that to happen. They may suspect that you have a hidden agenda or some other kind of motive rather than being direct. They may also feel uncomfortable. They like things the way they are right now. They don't want to rock their little boat, whatever that may be. They may also lack confidence in their ability to do something, or they may have done something similar in the past and it didn't turn out so great. So of course they're thinking about that, remembering those circumstances. And think about this, because this one kind of hit hard. Maybe you or I am the wrong person to be asking the question. Maybe there's somebody else that we know who can pose the question in a better way, has a different relationship with that person, and just maybe is going to get a different answer because they're not you. Hate to be honest about it, but we are not the end all for everybody when it comes to asking for things. Other reasons. The person could be unavailable at the moment. Maybe they're overwhelmed, they're distracted by other things. They have too many responsibilities, they're obligated in other organizations, they've got little kids, they're involved with their churches. There's just a ton of things that can be taking precedence over what you're asking. They may also have some kind of difficulty either focusing or concentrating on your message because they're tired, they're not feeling well, they're fatigued, maybe from other people asking them for things that they want done. That said, have you ever heard the expression, if you want something done, ask a busy person? Recently, in our Toastmasters Club of Menominee Falls, right after elections, we had a wonderful vice president of education who took a job, had a lot of traveling, and was now not going to be available for many of the meetings. We talked about it in our officers team meeting during that month, and we thought, well, we'll put it out to the people in the club to see if anybody was interested. One woman kept coming to mind as somebody who would be perfect for the job. And so we asked her. Turns out she has a very hefty schedule. We know how busy she is, but we asked her and she said, you know what? I'll give it a try. And she's been doing just fine. She knows she has our support, however, and she's doing just fine as vice president of education. Possibly the person may be offended, hard to believe, but they may be offended by your approach or your style. They may find your message to be pushy, a little aggressive, or too assertive, maybe a little arrogant, patronizing, unrealistic, but for whatever reason, they're not on board with what you're asking for. They may also dislike your tone, the language you're using, or your personality. So there are reasons why people may not be just chomping at the bit to jump at your request when you want to ask them something. Ask for feedback, look for reasons to encourage them, do the inspiration, do the motivation, do whatever you need to do, persuade, but be aware of who it is that you're talking with. And one hint, don't you be the reason why they said no. I would take a yes, and I would even take a maybe, but I don't ever want me to be the reason why somebody didn't want to accept a good challenge or something that I know would be helpful to them and to me. Before making that request, what we want to do is kind of pull our stuff together and what I call plot the approach. So we want to plan this out with sincerity. This is a skill that can enhance our effectiveness when we are asking somebody to do something for us. It's meant for us to be honest, straightforward, not hiding anything, not misrepresenting, not being deceitful. You can help by building some trust, rapport, by getting to know that person. Determine, as a suggestion, just to get on board with them, determine before you ask the question if this is the right time, the right place to ask them. And if not, what might be a better opportunity for you when you'll have their full attention and have them actually listening to you. Be authentic, be genuine, very similar to being sincere. You hear all the time people say, just be you. You have to be a little careful when you're just going to be you, because there's the you that we present to our friends and who will probably say yes to anything we ask them because they know us already. But then there's the you that we present to people when we are not real sure about them, want to make a good impression, and want them to trust us. So being authentic and being genuine means that we're not trying to do any kind of manipulation. We can share personal stories to get them on board. We can give them our personal experiences. We can share our opinions about things. We can admit that we have made mistakes and that maybe what we're asking them to do will require some help. And if we are the ones who need help, what better person to ask when we'll say, we're helping you. If you help me, I will be there for you. Be respectful and empathetic. It's all kind of like the golden rule. We want to treat the person as an individual, person who has unique needs, preferences, and perspectives. So that means we listen to concerns, we listen to objections, we listen to feedback that they select to give us. And in fact, that's a gift. Any kind of feedback they give us is going to help our approach not only with them, but with other people in the future. We respond with care because we do care. We care that we get a good answer for them and to maintain the relationship, and also with consideration. So trying to understand their point of view and then avoiding judging is something that we should all strive for. One thing, try to silence that voice in your head. And we've all got it. I've said in other presentations, it's just a good thing that people can't see that bubble that's over our head, which is our thoughts. Because oftentimes when we're talking to somebody and asking something and they say, I'm going to think about it, or nope, we right away jump to the conclusion of, oh, you don't like me, you have something better to do, I know you're not that busy, and that colors the way the rest of that conversation goes. So we need to be a little careful with that. We do want to be honest, we do want to be transparent, we want to tell the truth, even if it's not easy to talk about. I'm going to go back to that example of the vice president of education who stepped into the role when our original person stepped down. We should have And I think in some ways did say that the vice president of education is the second most responsible position of an officer in the club. We all work together, but when the president's not available, the VPE is second on board. And yes, it's going to require a little bit more time. And yes, there are a couple trainings that you need to go to every year in order to hold that position and make it so that you're successful. So being that honest, transparent person, even when there might be some details we don't want to share. And then finally, be consistent, be reliable. We need to be prepared to follow through on those commitments. If we say we're going to help them, we help them. If we say it's going to be hard, we tell them, and then we say, here's how it worked for me, or let me connect you with somebody who really is good at this role. And then plan to be punctual, because if they come to you and ask for help and you can't find the time because your schedule's too busy, don't expect them to do a good job. Don't expect them to say yes or even maybe in the future when you have a request. Did we miss anything about applauding our approach? I'm asking the audience here, participants, anything that you would add? Going once, going twice.
You could,
Okay.
Susan,
Yes, Yuri?
ask, connect with someone you asked in the past and what made them say yes to you. And then maybe ask them what in my request led you to say yes. And that person could be someone you know well enough, or maybe not as well. But the fact that they said yes, it could mean that the approach is working. At the same time, they could also give a suggestion how to change the approach, I suppose.
That's a good idea. I like that, to talk with somebody that you have approached before, found out what about your approach they appreciated. And even on the other side, like you said, Yuri, what could you have done a little bit better, and learn from that, and then consider that when you're going to talk to somebody. Thank you for that. All right, the approach that people dislike the most. We have to talk about it. I am going to ask you the question, first of all, and this again is a shout out. What approach do you dislike the most if somebody comes to talk to you to ask you for a favor, take a role, become an officer, join a project?
Pushiness.
Pushiness. Anyone else?
I see Teresa put hard sell in the chat.
Hard sell. Okay, I'm not watching the chat, so if somebody wants to shout out, tell me. Hard sell.
Beating around the bush.
Beating around the bush. Yes, of course. I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff, but not get to the point. Anyone else?
Too direct.
Oh, who just said that?
Rhonda? B.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'm glad you said that, because that leads into, what approach do you think people dislike the most? Being told what to do in a direct, authoritative, or coercive manner. And I have to smile when I say this and tell people, thank you for saying direct, because as we go through our pathways in Toastmasters, we are asked at some point to figure out how we lead people, what our communication approach is, and I fall into the very, very direct approach. So that means that there has been more than one time where I maybe was a little too direct, a little too authoritative. I hope I've never been coercive, but I can see being direct or authoritative. And there is a word for that. It's called reactance. So when people watch us being direct, authoritative, or coercive, they have reactance, our brain's response to a threat to our freedom or our choices. It's kind of like fight or flight, except they have no place to go. They have to give you an answer. And that can be hard. That can lead us sometimes to do the opposite of what we were asked to do. And that is nothing, or possibly sabotage. So let's stay away from that direct, authoritative, and never coercive approach. As an example, before I move on to the next piece here, Something that could trigger reactance is you need to lose some weight. And you go into your doctor, brand new physician, and he or she is about 300 pounds and could also stand to lose a little weight. And they tell you, you need to lose weight. All you have to do is this. Well, that's pretty direct, but I'm looking at you and you have not been taking your own advice, so why should I? Another example, if we put it into Toastmasters, we might approach somebody if we're trying to fill our agenda meeting after meeting and we never get a Toastmaster, is to ask somebody, would you care to be the Toastmaster? Now, they might, but they also might say no because they've never seen you as the Toastmaster. So we have to kind of emulate, show, teach, be the motive or the model for what we are asking people to do, avoiding reactance. Let's go on to you're getting around to asking your question and you're wondering, what is the person I'm asking thinking at this point? There's several different things. Can I trust you? Am I able to learn from you? Can I relate to you? Now, can they learn from you? With trust we talked about, but can they learn from you is, have they seen you keeping up with things? Introducing new points in your club or new points that has to do whatever topic you're asking them to do? Can they relate to you on some way? Are you both active in the same area? Do you have outside interests that are similar? Are you the kind of person that they'd like to take a walk with and have a conversation with? Do I admire you? Do I feel that you're positive and supportive? Well, they could admire you, maybe for your accomplishments in Toastmasters, in the organization that you're working with, in your family. More important, if they feel you're positive and know that you support them, they're thinking good things. And how would they know about support if they haven't had you helping them? They've been watching. They kind of know the people that you are helping out, who has said, Joe helped me with this, Mary helped me with that, and your reputation kind of flourishes that way by word of mouth. Are you selling me something you don't believe in? That can happen, and that's not something that you want to happen. For example, if I go up to somebody in my club and say, hey, I see that you're not doing very much in pathways. Why? You should be, you know. This is the way you become successful. This is the way that you grow in whatever reason you have joined Toastmasters. But then they ask me how I'm doing, and I haven't done a speech in 6 months. I haven't taken a club role. That kind of says, I don't believe in the method, but you should. So we're trying to sell them something that we don't believe in ourselves. Will you listen to me after I accept your request? So that means after somebody says, yes, I'd love to work with you, or maybe I'd love to work with you, are you going to say, hey, that's great, thanks a lot, see ya? Or are you going to be there for them? How will they know that you're going to be there to support them? Again, observation, your offer to give me your feedback, tell me what you're thinking about this, and how can we proceed? What are your ideas? How can you move forward? How can I help you with it? And would I take feedback from you? Well, if I've seen you give feedback to other people and they left crying, maybe not. But if I've seen you giving feedback, or perhaps you've given me feedback and I learned something from it, I feel you were sincere and you really meant it and you were being helpful, I probably am thinking good things. So that is some of the things that people might be thinking about. We've done everything correctly. It's time now for us to present our request to the person. So first of all, we're going to share the why. Why are we asking this person? What is the purpose and what is the vision that we have in mind for them? We're going to use positive language, because if we're not positive and upbeat, they're not going to be either. And anytime you want somebody to do something, it helps to be in the frame of mind where you've had a good day, or you can set stuff aside so that you don't come across with any kind of emotional baggage showing in your voice. Provide feedback and recognition. Perhaps at some point, you have seen this person do something exceptionally well that might fit the task you're asking about. Now's the time to give them the feedback. Now's the time to say, hey, you stood out and I saw it. Empower them to make decisions. When you present your request, tell them that they are in control of it. They will be the person who's going to make it happen, but we have a lot of support available for you if you have questions, one of them being me, the requester. And provide a challenge for them to grow. Help them understand that by taking the role, maybe it's something different. Maybe it's something never tried before, but there's a first time and they might just like it. And if it's Toastmasters, we all know Toastmasters is one of the very best places to fail because we have so much support and people respect us for trying. I should have waited. We're going to back up a little bit. Using positive language. Avoid using words that put pressure or any kind of guilt, such as using words should, must, need to, have to, because we don't want people to feel pressed into anything. Providing the feedback and recognition I talked about, and pretty much hit everything. I want to go back to positive language though, because I wrote down an example for me to share. And that is, if any one of you were in a club that I'm in and you wanted me to move forward in pathways, and I had one level yet to do, and it was level 5. And we all know that level 5 can be very intricate and involved. The way that you would not get me to do it is to say, Susan, why are you not on your level 5? You know, it's so easy. You should get going on it. We need it for our DCP. Well, it would be much better to use positive language with me and say, I like the way you've gone through your first 4 levels. That's been great. I've seen you getting your certificates. Tell me how I can help get you going on level 5. It just open up the conversation with an open-ended question. Yay, your request got accepted. You did everything right. So you have 3 opportunities, as Yuri said. You can get a yes, you can get a no, you can get a maybe. So when it's your request has been accepted, make sure you define the realistic goals. Let them know how it's going to benefit them. Ensure that if there are learning materials to be had, that they can get them immediately, easily, and that you can share it with them if you know what those would be. And it could be anything like the Toastmasters resources. If we're talking about Toastmasters, it could be one of these support seminars, if it's a new role or if it's in something that they're trying to accomplish in their club. There's any number of resources. Have those ahead of time so that you're ready to help out that way. Check in frequently at first and then as appropriate. You'll know as people are going along completing the request how far along they are, because you're going to stay in touch with them. Reward their engagement and their progress. You can do that in little ways along the way, and then when they're done, get some recognition, knowing of course how they like to be recognized, maybe in front of the club, or at least you taking them out for maybe a soda or a coffee. Be a good role model. So that, of course, we all know is, don't ask somebody else to do something that you yourself would not do, and especially not in the way that is anything we've talked about negatively. We want to make sure we're the good role model for them to be able to look up to us and get help when needed. Sorry, they said no to your request. Well, not all of our requests are going to be met with a maybe or a yes. And we've already discussed why people don't jump with anticipation when we ask them to do something. So consider these reactions. Be respectful and polite when you get a no, and accept the answer. Something like, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. Be curious, empathetic. try to understand and also show you care. What concerns might you be able to share with me about whatever it is you ask the person to do? Be flexible, creative, open to negotiation, and possibly compromise. What if we were to make this a co-vice president management role? Would that interest you? Or who else do you think, in your opinion, might be interested? Help me out. Here's the last response that we might get, and that's well, maybe. It could be, just as we talked about why people avoid taking on new tasks or challenges, it could be that they're not interested or they're not sure about the request that you're making. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're thinking? That might open up the conversation so that you can help by providing some additional information. They may be busy or unavailable right now. So if you have that follow-up mode, when would you like me to check back with you? Just checking in to see if you've made a decision about whatever it is you may have asked the person. Be interested, curious, especially if they need more information. The best response? Sure. What would you like to know more about? And then share that with them. Okay, we're almost time for our discussion. So we have covered this evening a few things. We've talked about the reasons why people don't jump at the chance, even when we think they should, and they're definitely the person for the job. We've talked about how to plot our approach. What should we be thinking about before we meet with the person so that we are being honest with them, so that we are giving them enough information, and that we're doing it in a way that we would like to receive. Points to cover as we present our request. We talked about resources, we talked about additional help, and many other things that we can help them with to make that decision. And then whether it's a yes, a no, or a maybe, we've talked about some ways to reply when the person gives us that particular answer. So before we move on to the discussion part, this is a quote from Lee Iacocca. So what do we do? Anything, something, so long as we just don't sit there. If we screw it up, start over. Try something else. If we wait until we've satisfied all the uncertainties, it may be too late. And my fellow Toastmasters, if we want something that we'd like to get done, we have our choice now if we're going to inspire, influence, or motivate. But I hope I've given you some inspiration this evening so that we never end up begging. I'm going to turn it back over to Yuri so that we can have our discussion, comments, and questions. Yuri.
Thank you, Susan, for sharing with us how to inspire, not beg. My favorite part of your presentation was where you went over all three. Usually might be just completely, when we get a no, it's it just makes us stop dead bold or dead in the heels, and there's almost no what's next. We just kind of forget about it. I learned tonight from you that maybe there is ways to avoid stopping dead bold and maybe do something else, because maybe it will lead to something else. At least that's what I picked up.
Thank you. Good.
We will now open up for questions. If you have questions, please either raise your hand or write in the chat. I see that Wayne Sabera, who is a member of OSU Toastmasters all the way from California, is joining us.
Hi, Wayne.
Hi, Wayne. Welcome. Do you have any questions? I think it may be your first time attending this kind of support seminar.
It is. I talked with Todd a little bit yesterday, and he told me about it. It sounded like something I wanted to do, and here I am.
Glad to have you.
Thank you for that very thoughtful presentation. I think you raised some excellent points. I appreciated the discussion that you're leading us into. it's a very important question of how to really let everyone reach their own potential of maximum success. And that's really what we're doing as coaches. We're helping other people to attain what they can attain. I think your briefing spoke directly to that. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to be here. I'll say more as we go.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. David, I know you're a member of Menominee Falls. I might be your first time, or not the first time. What kind of impression have you gotten, or what's something that you learned or picked up on that you want to share?
Well, it's always interesting to hear Susan telling it from her perspective, because I had, a different perspective on what was happening as that was evolving in our club. So that's good to hear, how other people saw things developing.
Thanks, Dave. Dave is the treasurer for the Menominee Falls Club, and he's been that for over 3 years. He is one of the people that we asked to take a role of treasurer. And what were you, Dave, 3 months in as a member, and you said yes?
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't remember who it was that asked him, but I'm glad he said yes. He's doing a phenomenal job.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Cindy, I know you have an active stake in planning the summer TLIs and soon to be winter TLIs, and you probably got way ahead of us earlier this year when you and Robert asked people to present. What kind of approach did you use? Was it similar to Susan, or maybe it was an extension of what Susan mentioned today?
Well, thank you. And thank you, Susan, for your insight and thoughts. I think
Welcome.
sometimes what you have to do is I have to prepare exactly what I'm asking someone to do. What am I seeking for them to do? And then sometimes you ask and they'll say no. And that's, to me, I like when I get no, because no says, I'm good, I'm going to move on to the next person. I think I always look at no's are great because I can move right along. Yeses are great because you have them. To me, it's the maybes that always can be the challenge. So I think knowing more people and casting a wider net in these type of things is truly vital because, as you all mentioned, schedules, life, work, and sometimes it's just hitting people at the right time. So, and I have to say, sometimes I like when people say, Cindy, would you be able to be this, this, and this at this time? And I believe that's direct, and I take no offense at that. When someone coercive, yes, those aren't words I enjoy, but I don't think directness is in and of itself a negative.
Cindy, can I build or ask you another question related to that? If the person who's being very direct in asking you to do something is somebody you know, does it make a difference how well you know them? Because I soften my approach as a direct communicator a lot with people, because I know I could go to Rhonda because she's also a direct communicator and tell her, Rhonda, I need you to do this. Can you help out? And I don't have to give her any ifs, ands, or buts. She'll ask the questions. She'll say yes, no. I don't think I'd ever get a maybe from her. So is it how well you know?
I'm not sure. I don't think we should ever be rude. Oh my goodness, right? I don't think we should ever assume things. But I like to think of asking these questions, regardless of their answer, as giving people an opportunity and a gift. And if they don't want it, that's completely fine. That's completely fine, because then you can move on and offer it to others. So I had a club years ago, a very quiet person. She wanted to just really remain, in the back. And it was contest season. And I said to her, you know what I would love to challenge you with? She said, what? I said, I would love for you to be our sergeant at arms at this contest. She said, what does that mean? And I explained it to her, the logistics, what it would look like. I think for a lot of people, that's important. What's it going to look like? What will I need to do? And she said, okay, I'll do it. And I said, and I'll be there. It's going to be great. And I think when it's done, you'll be glad you did. She came to me afterward and she said, I never would have volunteered for it, but I'm so glad you asked me.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. I have a question for Chris. You still there with us, Chris, with your pathway there in fall? Okay, here's my question for you. What have you found to be a really good approach? Because I know you've asked me to do things, and I think I've said yes most of the times. And I'm sure because you've had almost every single role that I could name off right off the top of my head in Toastmasters, how do you get people to say yes so nicely? And I agree, you always have the smile, and asking people with a smile absolutely helps. Do you have some insights or some extra advice for us?
Bribery usually works. I give the
Not
hugs.
coercion, just bribery.
Money is never an option for me, but sometimes I'll bake treats or candy or whatever. But a lot of it comes because I've built a relationship with people already.
Hmm.
And they know that I'm asking because I really need the help, because I think a lot of them realize and know that I am a control freak and I don't like to give anything up. And if I am actually asking for help, they know, oh my, she is working towards something else. That's one of it. And I think a lot of people know too, when I ask for help or if I ask them to do something specific, it's because they know that it's something I would do if I were capable and had the time. I
Mhm.
don't ever ask anything that I am not willing to do myself or that I have not already done in the past. But part of Toastmasters, especially in the leadership roles now, let's get some of these other members to start developing those same type of skills. And so I think that comes in with that inspiration, setting the example. People see me doing all of this and realize, is that something I want to do, something I can do? And Chris is asking me for help. Yeah, I want to be on her team also. So that's kind of where my perspective on this. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. You're not off the hook yet, though. Don't go back to the path.
Okay.
Does that ever work against you? Meaning, Chris is asking me to do it, and I know how respected and how talented Chris is. I talked a little bit about maybe I can't live up to the expectations that you're setting for me. Has that ever happened, and how did you handle that?
Yes, that has come up in the past, especially when asking others to step up into officer roles. Well, I can't be like you. I can't do what you did. And I tell them, I don't expect you to. You do you. You do what makes you you. These are the expectations of what I want in the role, and how you get to that point, you get to decide. And that's something the last few years I've really been working with. I don't want to do that. And I equate it with work. I don't want to micromanage. If you have questions along the way, come and ask me. I'll tell you what's worked for me, or I'll give a couple different suggestions because I've tried things different ways too. This is what has worked for me, but it may not work for you. You need to determine that yourself. We had a club secretary a few years ago. He took copious notes as secretary, typed, I mean, literally, he had 10, 12 handwritten pages, and he would type that up and send it out to the members a few days later. Everyone we asked to be the secretary, no, 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 because I can't do what he did. I said, you don't have to do what he did. He did that because that's what he enjoyed doing and made the role himself. This is what we expect. And if you do beyond that, fantastic. That's what we would love you to do. But this is what we are expecting. And once I kind of bring them down of, oh my gosh, I can't do that. No, this is what we want. And I can help you, guide you, give you suggestions. Then they think about it a little bit more and, yeah, I'll try that.
Mhm.
And another approach that I do, I'm going to ask you something, but I do not want an answer today. And I want you to think about it. I don't want you to outright say no. because I know that's what you want to say. No,
Mhm.
I'm going to ask you. I want you to think about it. Get back to me in 3 days with a yes or no once you've thought about it. Or what other questions do you have as we go through this to get you to say yes?
Yeah, I like that approach. That's good because you don't put anybody on the spot that way. They have the
Mhm.
chance to think it over a little bit and consider and maybe ask you some questions. And I guess when they ask you those questions, don't take that as a yes. Take it as they're just asking the questions and let them make their own decision. That was one of the things that I mentioned also is that let them know they're in charge of how it gets done. You're there to help, but like you said, with the secretarial notes, not sometimes you can get to the same point without going through the same effort. You just need the record, and whatever you do is going to be great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Rhonda Williams, I know that in the past, you are, of course, the past district director or governor. I forget what it was used back then. I also know you had went through a whole year of being a region advisor, which is probably from my understanding, a step, another next step after being a district director. Given the kind of what must be intensity and expansion of what you were doing as district director, maybe you can share with us what's something that the person did or said that led you to say yes to being a region advisor?
Well, first of all, to become a region advisor, it's a very competitive process, and you have to you're interviewed, you fill out an application, you send in a recording of a training session, and it was really challenging. And the first time that I applied for it, I actually was turned down, and then I went back and applied again. And I don't know if part of the competitiveness made it more attractive. And I don't know, Cindy, you could also speak to this. I don't know if the fact that it was so hard to get in made you want it more. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's something to ponder. Maybe we should make it harder for people to take what we're asking them to do. It's like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I should ask you to do this. I'm not sure you're the right. I don't know. But that almost sounds manipulative. I think, one thing that I would like to mention during this, because one thing that we didn't talk about, and you didn't really talk about, Susan, was sometimes you get somebody who takes on a position and then they are not following through as effectively as you might hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if we could just have some discussion around that. Like what are some ideas that people have to kind of bring out the best now that you've got the person and they said yes and they're in the role and they're doing they've said yes, but you're not seeing the results that you expected. And is that something that people want to talk about? Because one thing that I found very effective is just trying to find time to ask them a lot of questions, a lot of probing questions, rather than saying, you haven't produced any results yet, as my direct self would want to say, right? You haven't done what I expected. But, a lot of times it's a matter of, so how's that going? When do you think you're going to reach this milestone, or what have you set as milestones, and questions like that? Because I think we've all probably been in that boat. We're all club leaders and district leaders, and I think we've all been in that position where somebody has taken on a challenge and we're just not seeing the results that we're expecting. I'm wondering what some other people have done in that case.
I can chime in. I like the idea of questions simply because as you were talking about that, I thought about something happened last year while I was president in the Menominee Falls Club. And that was somebody who had been doing a really, really good job kind of faded away a little bit, an officer. And I asked the question. I said, what's going on? I've missed you at meetings. we had a couple guests, but I didn't see something done for the guests, that kind of thing. And it turned out she had taken a new job, and she's a tax kind of person. She took it at the beginning of tax season. And so now she's trying to juggle that job with doing a good job at the new role and still fulfilling the role that she had committed to. So we talked about it, and because I had held the role before, I stepped in for her, and she says, as soon as tax day is over, I'm back at it. And she was. Sometimes you don't know. I see Jason waving.
Yeah, I'll chime in here too. I absolutely agree, Susan. I think what I have found the most effective is actually removing what you need and talking about it on a personal level. How are you doing? What's going on in your life? Understanding the person, because the more you can understand the person, you can understand, there may be obstacles that are preventing them from doing what you're trying to get from them. So if you understand those obstacles, you can either help them overcome those obstacles or respect those obstacles and then help them work through those obstacles. Jobs change, life changes, life moves on. We all have very complex lives and things change. And going at it, I think, from a more compassionate way of saying, hey, I'm concerned what's going on. Can you share with me? Can we talk about it? Versus, hey, this isn't done. What are we going to do to get this done? Because you can get to that point by understanding what's going on and say, okay, I understand. Now, how can we work together to get done what needs to be done?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big believer in working together. If life happens, can we pull other resources? Can we bring other people in, work together to get the big goal accomplished? That's my 2 cents.
That was well worth it, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Wayne. Go ahead.
I think Susan had all those words in her presentation. Empathetics immediately comes to mind. It's like Jason was saying, the root cause of all of these issues generally is something personal with the individual. When the president is indoctrinated, it's usually said that that's both the easiest and the most difficult job in the club officer roles, because the president doesn't have to do anything as long as the other officers are doing their job. Wherein lies the rub, because sometimes they're not always doing the job well enough, thoroughly enough, or something is going awry that needs attention. So the president's job is to help ensure and support and coach all of the officers in the club. And being empathetic is the real key to that. In general, there's something going on. Maybe there's something that changed in their life that affects their performance. They just need a little help, a little support, a little bit of encouragement. One-on-one personal touch is really important. Sometimes it's a technical matter that there were things that happened in the job that were unexpected. I didn't know this was going to be there, and I don't know how to do it. For example, in public relations, there may be technology issues. There may be other things that come up. So I would look to form a team and say, let's figure out how we can get some help. You need some help with the website. You need some help with Facebook. We will look in the club and see who can help you with that. So build a little of a support structure for the person that's having the challenge, if that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a variety of questions, and it's not a simple answer to a complex question. What if a person is in the office that they've agreed to do and it's not working out? Step 1, have a conversation and find out what's going on. Step 2, be supportive and problem solving to come up with an approach. And then check in, see if it's working. So those would be some suggestions to consider.
Those are good. The person that I was referring to would never have come, I don't think, on her own to say, hey, I can't do this right now. And that wasn't her mode. That's not the way she operates. And so I learned that over being a club member with her for a year or so. And so that's why I thought there's something else going on. And that was time to have that personal conversation, as both you, Wayne, and Jason were talking about.
And as one of the I see all the time, and because you are the only one, coincidentally, from across the border from Canada, maybe you could share with us something that you've seen, whether by going to the countless clubs or even within your own two districts, that on the topic of motivation, where something that worked well that we don't know about yet.
Thank you very much for applying a little bit of pressure instead of letting me just sit here like a bump on a log. But yes, you are correct. I mean, sometimes you have to carry a big stick, and sometimes you have to have no stick at all and just, as many people have said, try to walk that mile in their shoes and figure out why or how you can support them. And sometimes I think in a rush to get things done, we want to do it instead of letting them try and do it, and we feel the struggle from the individual, and it's the struggle that provides the growth. Not necessarily should the struggle lead to a downfall of the club, but I think our greatest successes are when we've had to struggle a little bit and we've learned something through the struggle. So it's where if you let them slide to where you put a little bit of pressure to make sure that the individual is getting their goals met, but also the club or the organization is getting its objectives met, because you can't have one at the detriment of the other, or because of one, the other one fails.
Thank you, Todd. Would anyone else like to share anything? We have about 3 minutes left. Well, now it's 2 minutes left. You have about a minute to kind of set up the next meeting, but if anyone else has any last minute tips, I will open the I'll open that airspace for it now. All right, no worries. Then thank you, Susan, for presenting. Always a delight to have you.
Thank
We
you.
see each other now twice in the last 48 hours, at least.
Great.
Right.